Well, hi everyone, and thank you so much for coming to the Ready, Set, Rise Summit. Our first speaker today will be Mei Xu, who's been a personal hero and an icon of mine for the past several years. Ever since I realized that Chesapeake Bay Company was led by a female founder who is of Asian American descent. So today, during this next half an hour, the fireside chat is called Burning Questions with Mei. I know there's been many questions from both female founders as well as other women in business that have asked, especially for someone like Mei. So to start off, Mei, would love for you to introduce a little bit about yourself, your background, and share a little bit more about the company that you're building today.
Thank you, Vivian, and what a pleasure to see you and growing the business during the most difficult time. I am the founder of Mei. Before that, I was the founder and the CEO of Chesapeake Bay Candle. What I would say about the Chesapeake Bay Candle journey is that I end up, obviously like many other founders, graduating as a founder to, watching it from a distance. It gives me opportunity to reflect. In fact, I recently also published a book called Burn. It's about my journey from China as an immigrant to become an entrepreneur, and how do I launch brand, and why certain things work in consumer product, and why sometimes it doesn't work. So with my lesson learned, I had always been asked by women, particularly entrepreneurs, about how did I scale the business? How do I know it's the right time to move manufacturing from China to Vietnam, and then from Vietnam partially to the United States? So I was consulting with quite a few of them after I stepped down in 2018, and then the pandemic hit. We quickly realized that a lot of women-owned businesses are very much disrupted, as retail was very much disrupted throughout the world. And a lot of their customers canceled their orders, and there was no tourism, which means for many of them who rely on international visitors, their income was also disrupted. I had the idea of setting a website to basically give them a solution and an opportunity to meet American consumers. So Mei was launched at the thick of the pandemic in June of 2020. We launched with an idea that women-owned businesses have a lot of great advantages in that they actually came because they can't find product they look for. It came from a deep understanding of consumers' pain point. And it also came from a place where they marry solutions with very nice quality and design. So we want to give them a voice and a representation. So Mei has become a multi-vendor platform. Over the last year, we have welcomed almost 100 vendors from 25 countries and 5 continents. So again, we're very pleased with the progress, but we just discussed there's a lot to do and a lot to learn in the same time.
So love that journey, especially growing a company like Chesapeake Bay Candle Company, and then I just find it so inspirational because you could have done anything, but you decided to start a company helping other women entrepreneurs, right? Especially not only in the US but at the global stage as well. So there's a saying that's, to know where you're going, we have to know where we're from. So even, maybe before diving into either one of these businesses, I wonder if you could share a little bit about your background, and maybe has any of your upbringing and your prior experiences before becoming a founder and entrepreneur that's shaped your beliefs and the vision that you have for today.
Thank you again for the question. I do believe that, my background from China was when China was just about to open to the rest of the world. I grew up during the Cultural Revolution, and it was a very singular culture where things are very homogeneous. Women and men wear the same clothes. There's not much sort of consumerism. There's not a lot of trend or fashion or even art to speak to. But I was very fortunate in a sense in 1979 when after the 74 visit by President Nixon, China actually decided to open to the rest of the world and normalize diplomatic relations. And in 1978 and 1979, the government decided that they need to bring up more talent in diplomacy that not only understand English and learn it or other languages at a younger age, but allow them to have plenty of time to understand the cultural and the history of each country. So they set up 8 middle schools and high schools in 8 different cities around the country to promote that foreign diplomacy training. And I was one of the few students in Hangzhou, which is to the east of Shanghai, southeast of Shanghai. And I was admitted in the year of 1979, where at 12, I was going to be trained as a diplomat and in a very interesting immersion manner. I think that exposure really gave me a very good appreciation of observing culture, observing things that are happening around me, and it also really well prepared me for the journey once I'm in the US and find my way to start a business.
Yeah. No, I think for sure, like I can see how from such a young age, you grew up in one culture, but at the same time, simultaneously, you were exposed to many different things. So I'm wondering, entrepreneurship is filled with risks in the unknown, right? So when you started your first company, I imagine there were definitely moments when you could have taken one path or another, or even, becoming a diplomat or other things that were open to you as possibilities. How did you have that conviction to move forward with this particular idea when so many other possibilities could have been open to you?
That's a very, very interesting question. And I would just say, I was trained as a diplomat, but I graduated from China in the Foreign Language Institute in a year that everybody would recall as Tiananmen Square in 1989. I'm sorry, I was trying to think about the year 1989 in July. So after being assigned to be outside of Beijing, as all the students graduating that year have to do, I realized that there would be a whole year where it would be a gap. I wouldn't be able to practice English. I wouldn't be able to be engaged to remind me and to refresh my memory on my language capability. And that to a foreign language student, it's very detrimental because I would be isolated, watching warehouse that is exporting minerals for China. So I resigned, which was thinking back, which is a demonstration of some entrepreneurship at a very early stage. Because in 1989 and 1990, the only way you grow to the ranks among the diplomatic corps is to go through that process. And resigning from that process means I permanently take myself out of the diplomatic corps of the Chinese government, as well as any other government-related jobs. And truthfully, at that time, anything foreign affairs or foreign business related has been controlled by the government. So resigning from that kind of position is to basically close all doors for me as a student and a new graduate. So that was first probably difficult time. And the reason I chose to do that is just because I feel there's a world out there that if I'm prepared, if I'm hardworking, perhaps I'll create a future for myself. And really, literally, that was the first major decision. And then when I came here in Maryland, because I want to be close to the World Bank, I was interning for the World Bank throughout my college years. I was working with them, and I really liked the international sort of aid part of the business, the community that I was part of, very multicultural, very supportive. But again, I graduated in University of Maryland in a year when we had a war with Iraq in 1991 and 1992. And as the World Bank has received most of its funding from the US in that period of time. When the country goes to war, it put a stop on some of the funding, which means a lot of the hiring is stopped. So there's a hiring freeze again right after I graduate.
So much parallel with today, even.
Parallel. And
Yeah.
rather than being able to go back to work there, I was asked to find something else to do because of the hiring freeze. So once again, I was graduating into a very uncertain future, and I couldn't find a job very easily with a non sort of green card background and definitely not American citizen. The kind of jobs that open to people with a communication and journalism background is very limited. A lot of positions are media related or government agency related. So I had to find a job away from the Washington, D.C. area, and I found it in New York, as you probably recall. But it was a very difficult time, again, personal life wise. I had been married, and my ex-husband, now my ex-husband, my then husband, David, was actually working here, and I was working in New York. So I commute on a weekend, and I did not know many people. I feel very isolated, and I do not quite like my job because the environment is such that my immediate report, supervisor was always giving me some challenges about my work, or giving me things that is mundane. It's not helping the organization or giving me a chance to demonstrate my background. So all these reasons, I would say, it's not that I even have a chance to say, oh, this job is pretty good, but let me think what else I can do. I was completely devastated with this job, and I was very unhappy. So it's because of that I started going around to see the Bloomingdale stores, and I see with my trained eyes the opportunity as a gap between fashion and home, where fashion is very contemporary and very minimalist, and home is very mundane and very old schooled. And as someone who's always studying cultural patterns and the sort of lifestyle changes, I made a comment, and I made this comment a lot to my husband, that I feel there's something that can be done in the home business that fashion already covered. And so it's not so much that I just decided I want to quit. I think it's also I was quite inspired by this discrepancy, and comparing my circumstances, I was kind of forced to arrive at a conclusion because I couldn't find anything that inspired me as a company to hire me. So does that seems to be also a way to answer your question? I know it's very long worded, but it is.
No, but I find it too. I find it so interesting because what you described, what you described was basically what a lot of people are feeling right now, which is the idea of being open and switching careers and not feeling like you are pigeonholed into one area, despite if that's what you studied or it's the place where you found your first job, right? But having that courage to make that change and pursuing that inspiration is something that I think so many women can relate to. Which there's both the internal desire to change, but also the external, which is you happen to be looking for a job in the middle of a very difficult political climate, economic recession, which is something, again, the great resignation that is happening post the recession that we just had. All of these are cycles that happen again and again. And I think for so many people, right, finding that inspiration, finding that courage to hear your story of how you went about doing that, I think is really wonderful.
I hope so. I really do think it's very similar.
Yeah. Circling back a little bit about the transformation that you had to do, because it sounds like, when you had that idea, it's been brewing in your head, you've been thinking about it for a while. What kind of transformation did you have to go through in order to master the skills to transform from what you were previously, so many different hats that you've been wearing, to now becoming an entrepreneur, a founder, and someone who is in charge of her own destiny?
I think that's always a myth for many people. One of the things I get asked a lot is, what are the skill set for an entrepreneur? How do you make up for what you don't know on a subject matter, for example, candles, fragrances, home industry, consumer product, none of which I was actually educated for, as well as even having experiencing from the previous job. I think that this is going back to what I say, the fundamental role of education is not so much we learn the subject matter or we get updated for our future knowledge need. I think it's the idea of learning to learn, the idea to learn, as well as the mindset that we're never too old to learn more. Even now, at this age, I'm 54, every day I notice new things that I need to learn about algorithm, about how to put a Facebook ad that is going to be more interesting. And I think at the end of the day, it's about being open-minded, and accept and admit that the only way we make progress is to constantly adjust and constantly absorb and constantly learn. So I would tell you that I learned so much as a student of diplomacy when I changed my career to become an entrepreneur, and learning about fragrances, learning about quality control, factory manufacturing, finances, and then now learning about e-commerce and technology. And you and I talked a few times about the talent that is different we need to attract now versus the one that we had before. So I think the mindset of an entrepreneur is somewhat, I think, is different. First of all, that you mentioned a very important word, which is risk. We have a lot more tolerance for risk. Sometimes I say there is something between immigrant and entrepreneur that are very similar, in that we both are capable of abandon what's familiar and what's arranged to pursue something very risky and unfamiliar. And in that process, being able to make a lot of decisions that it's hard for quite a lot of people. So a risk tolerance is one thing. The second thing is open-mindedness. I think all the entrepreneurs I met have that quality, the quality of being able to learn from another industry or learn from another country or learn from another company. And that open-mindedness is probably what gives them the reason to succeed, because a lot of times they will fail.
Yeah.
And if you're very focused on the failure and not focused on what you learn from the failure, that will be the difference between those who succeed and those who can fail and just not see the potential out there.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. I'm curious, speaking a little bit about what you said about learning to learn, as well as, the open-mindedness of being a founder and entrepreneur. What do you think was Chesapeake Bay Candle Company's secret sauce to success? And for yourself, obviously you're starting a new company now. What lessons you now take on to this new venture? And, we'll dive into a little bit about Yashime as well, but we'll love to just hear a little bit about that.
I think I already have a little bit hint on the success of Chesapeake Bay because we started from the right place. We started by identifying a gap and a need to do better in an overall industry at that time ripe for innovation and design and upgrade. And I was not only getting into the business to make things cheaper or more efficient, which is another way to find your own niche, but to innovate and to be very open about making it into a very different experience for consumers. So rather than say, oh, how can we make candles that last longer or cheaper, I say, how can we make burning candle part of our life that brings joy and happiness? And how can we make candle not a commodity product, but a fashion product that have seasonality, that have occasions, that have meaning? Because fragrance has a lot of emotional impact on humans. And how do we connect those sort of natural functionality of fragrance to a certain benefit, consumers can appreciate? So I really think turning something very mundane and making it an experiential product is probably what we did well, and did well at a very early stage of our business. And fortunate for me, when the candle industry just about to explode in the 1990s. So there's always the timing. One cannot do things against timing, against where the moment is for us to seize. I feel very fortunate to be able to also remind everyone, I was growing the business while China and the US were at its honeymoon stage. The two countries was very open to each other, and there was a lot of goodwill on both sides. So when I see that I'm one of the few people in the consumer product that is not just importing product, I'm actually working on my own design and having China produce it, I'm already having a great advantage over a lot of people. So I feel understanding your opportunity and understanding the timing is really very key to success. As you know, we all ride on a wave, and that wave can bury us, it can also carry us. And that's exactly the moment I find myself at the moment with the e-commerce website. You know how many people have started e-commerce website, and a lot of them, frankly, are doing the right thing by directly moving them from Amazon to a D2C website. That's how Shopify is on fire, because every brand is available now to consumers. And I think consumers are very open to that business model because they want that transparency, they want that connectivity that is closer. So I do feel this is also that big transformative moment for retail industry.
For sure. I think many people have been feeling this seismic shift, right? Especially given that last year, the pandemic,
Right.
many people are either jumping into an entrepreneurships or thinking about new careers they can pursue. And it's all about, capturing that moment and what are the opportunities, because there are now new opportunities coming out of this new period and shift.
Right.
So what you said about, not only creating a product that people desire and want and listening to the customers, but also making sure that you are riding the wave and capturing the moment and where the market is going is really important as well.
I think so. Yes.
This actually brings me to what you're working on today, which is Yes,
Right.
She May. I'm curious, if you, could tell us a little bit about why this is so important for you. You mentioned that you launched this in the middle of the pandemic. What are some of the things that you're seeing this time around at Yes, She May versus the first time when you launched a company, which was wildly successful? What are some of the learnings and the transformations that you yourself had to go through to lead a company a second time?
Well, when I reflect back on the decision of launching Yes, She May, it was not a moment of despair. I wasn't in a very rock and a tough place to choose the next option that it was not there. So I created option for myself. This time around, obviously, I was more thinking that the timing is about right to test the idea of a socially driven entrepreneurship that is focused on a kind of business that otherwise should be a nonprofit business. I'm sure you know that we are all talking about ESG, the equity, the sustainability, and the governance aspect of a company is now definitely bold writing letters for all the companies. But when it's about implementation, we are years and years away from seeing that happen. Even before the pandemic, a lot of the companies, such as Bank of US, I don't know why I say China, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, or MasterCard, you can see all of them have a very big focus on developing among the small businesses, particularly minority-owned business and women-owned business. The math is very clear. Women in the US makes over 85% of household purchase decisions, from healthcare providers to the kind of travel we take, to the houses we buy, and clearly all the grocery shopping, fashion investment, on and on. However, because they're so small, and because women-owned businesses are not big enough to do business with the likes of Walmart and Target and even Amazon, their business only represents less than 5% of what's available to you and I. In other words, most of us don't have access to women-owned businesses. We can find them now at Etsy, but not after a lot of struggle to find many similar products. And you still wouldn't know if they are owned by a woman or not. So the opportunity I see is not let's make it very equal. We need to have 50% owned by men or 50% owned by women. It's the opportunity as a business I see that if we are not taking advantage of women's insight and the pinpoint, and they're the ones spending, there has to be, again, there's a big gap, a very big gap of what we are seeing in the marketplace and what they could be. The gap is huge, and there's no fundamental system to address this. Imagine if you are Target, can you work with a company that's less than $200,000 a year in revenue? You can't. Each order is going to be bigger than that. By the time you're working with anyone that you can count on as a supplier, they have been doing at least 5 to 10 million. That was the size I was before I started working with them. And then you can invest in scaling, in manufacturing, in efficiency, design to help grow the business. So how do you grow from a one-person shop to a $5 million business if you don't have a certain intervention? Who will be your intermediary company to kind of foster and grow, like an incubator, right? So this is the idea I have, is that yes, she may eventually is a marketplace where we choose not just emerging brand, but really brands that is about to be transformed. So we are not open platform for that reason, because I understand each and every stage of development of a business, you have a lot of obstacles. And there are also good reasons you do not open your marketplace to everyone, because then you can't really focus on the ones that are ready to take off. So we have a very rigid system to evaluate their performances. We have vendor scorecard to see their order fulfillment rate, their order fulfillment time, their accuracy rate, and the overall product innovation and basically updates. But when we evaluate those who are ready for us, one of the things, I don't know, Vivian, if I ever mentioned to you, was that we did some very big and bold decisions at the very beginning last June, is that the only way we can work with them is if they can ship directly to consumers, which is the dropship model. At that time in June of 2020, there was not many brands in this country outside of China have heard about dropship to consumers. Cross-border business to them means a vendor in Japan or in Italy will have a wholesale relationship with us. And then we will place an order at the beginning of season. In the case of Italy, it's about 8 months before the season. And we will write 2 orders, one for initial, and the second is a backup. And then we pay for it. And then 6 months later, the first shipment arrives, and we put them on the website and we sell it. And then even if we want to adjust our second order, it's not possible. The way that it works, particularly in Europe, is that the material and the inventory is planned in such a way that it does not allow you to make a lot of adjustment. And when the items you want to buy is really selling, you also can reorder the ones you want. So that is a traditional international distribution model. And the one we came up with is vendor. For example, I'm just going to give you an example of our vendor called Nude, N-U-D-E. They're based in Bocconi, and they really want to expand their business model. And we would have, say, okay, of all your collections, maybe you have 200 SKUs for spring, we want to choose for 48. During those time, we would obviously buy samples for photo shoot. They would provide their photo, assets as well, and we will launch them on our website without any inventory other than the samples. And then once we see the orders, the orders will be also seen by them, and they will ship directly to you, Vivian, if you order a white cropped, you know, or sweater, in size M or in size S. And if they run out of stock, then we can sell it to you. And we will say, hey, Vivian, just like e-commerce will send you a note. So that's the way we propose the business. And that is a shocking proposal. I can tell you how many people shut me down as soon as they heard the word dropship. They think it's evil because rather than taking wholesale from them, which get rid of a lot of their inventory, I'm asking them to hold it. And I'm also not predicting how much I will sell because I'm very honest. I said, this is our new business. We're in a pandemic. Let's try to learn how to manage this together, because after my 25 years in the Chesapeake Bay business, one thing I hear loud and clear is the previous way of retail is not going to work.
Yep.
What Macy does is Macy doesn't discriminate out of the 288 SKUs and a nude will carry. They buy the whole thing. In fact, they buy the same amount across board. So the same SKUs, same amount, same size. So when they actually come in, the rule of thumb is that 20% of a SKU will perform 80% of the business.
Yeah.
There's going to be big winners and there'll be big losers. With the losers, at the end of a season, they go to Nude and say, guess what? We have 80% of the item that we couldn't sell. Why don't you give us a big discount? Okay. This is where we learned as consumers to go on a discount hunt. They start with 40%, then they go to 60%, and then they go to 80%. If you think it's just Macy's losing money, you're wrong. It's usually footed by vendors.
Yeah.
So they could start a year with selling to $500,000 to Macy at 40% margin to end that season with only really $150,000 of sales and very low margin to basically cover their costs if they want to continue. So I'm determined to change this business in the way that women have more control of their inventory because they can read the trends week by week and they can invest differently. For example, talking about sweaters or yarns, they can invest in buying the yarn. They don't even need to weave them until they see, oh, the black is outperforming the white. And in the black, the small is 3 times more than the medium, which is two times more than this big. And then they can start adjusting. And this is the kind of learning that every business have to go through in order to get better, to get stronger, and then get more bold in their own business.
Yeah.
So that's the fundamental difference between what we're doing now and what most of the retailers are doing is that they build this wall around themselves and they never share information with vendors. So you're either dying because there's no business, or their demand is over the roof and you can't supply them fast enough. So over the year, this is the kind of conviction we have carried. And I have to do a lot of persuasion. I feel like a candidate for presidency because there's so much I have to say and so much concerns about this model.
I feel like, what you described just now is, yes, Shimei is more than just a multi-vendor sort of e-commerce platform, but it's a platform to elevate the next generation of female entrepreneurs.
It is.
Providing them with transparency, with data, and in some ways, giving them the power to decouple them from the need of some of these larger retail chains, which could really be punishing to them if they don't satisfy desires and the needs of these large players. Which, in some ways, if you think about it, there's a lot of parallel between the retail world and how women are treated in just corporate America in general, right? Like so many times when you look at like women, we enter the workforce at the entry level. There's many more women, but then as you go higher and higher up, you're going to start to see fewer and fewer female leaders, and it kind of goes into this cycle, vicious cycle where when people don't see themselves succeeding up top, then a lot of times women don't go for those reach goals. So I think it's the same thing. The more female entrepreneurs that you see succeeding on e-commerce platforms, the more female entrepreneurs there will be.
Yes, I do believe this is a very positive trend that you do see. I was reading a lot about the newer, younger, particularly more technology-driven businesses that really build on the founders' technology background, but also their understanding of what consumers really need. At the end of the day, that's what we're really trying to touch is that consumers are tired of shopping similar product. They want to support small privately owned business, and they want to support people with their own vote. It's just that how do we give each other the access to each other and also cultivate a closer relationship, I hope, than a transaction of goods, money, which is my hope.
Well, sort of to, I know we've spent a lot of time talking about your journey as well as the mission alignment between your first company and the second company. I want to, sort of end the conversation on the book that you just wrote recently, Burn, How Grit, Innovation, and a Dash of Luck Ignited a Multi-million-dollar Success Story. There's a part in the book, which you talked about in social media, that actually really resonated with me. And I wanted to read a little bit of a sample here and to get some of your thoughts on here. So in the book, you talked about the importance of well-being and mental health. You said, I taught my sons to work hard and to exhibit generosity and goodness when dealing with others. But given my daily stress and chaos and anxiety and irritability inevitably followed. I wasn't teaching them to attend to their own needs. I didn't prioritize my own wellness and self-care. And I knew after almost killing us in a car crash, that it was time for a change. Instead of just catering to others, I realized I needed to reconnect to my own emotional needs, inner self, and personal wellness. This is something that, when I read it, it spoke to sort of the last year and a half that I've had, right? All of us have had sitting in front of our computers and not really prioritizing ourselves. I'm curious, what advice do you have for those listening in the audience to actually slow down and focus on ourselves? Because it's so easy to say, oh, just prioritize yourself, but how do you actually do it? What did you do so that you could prioritize yourself?
That's something that really I have been thinking about also recently, because once again, I find during the pandemic, just like you said, I never have left this house. I was also cooking 3 meals a day, and I was constantly sort of struggling with my schedule, because you think that everybody's off, but you also know when you can reach everybody on the Zoom, you can't explain that you're actually behind because you're driving and there was an accident. There's none. So I do feel probably the first thing I go back to the calendar, because I sometimes think about my life as a giant calendar. And the calendar does not have May's time or blue sky thinking time, or just put it in big writing, nothing. There's never an hour in my day that it says nothing. My assistant too is so happy to fill that gap between meetings, that as soon as there is a new thing demanded, she fills it there. So I've been telling her and myself that it's okay, we have gaps. That is actually a wonderful thing. And rather than rush to fill them, the goal is not to fill them on a hour by hour basis. And then I have to think that, what do you prioritize about the me time? I absolutely think, as you know, I had health struggles. So I'm looking back and thinking for all the younger women like you, one of the things that is a mind and body connection is a stress. And because it's manifested itself through your body, you have to be able to slow down and listen to yourself. So that means literally take walks every day, no exception. If you can, exercise, because in doing so, you are in touch with yourself. How often we don't feel hungry because we're so stressed, or we don't feel pain because we're so stressed, or we are overwhelmed by our children's busy schedule or lack of play date, or in my case, we have 3 kids applying for college at this right moment. So we were thinking about all the deadlines, but I think carving out, without compromise, a daily schedule that contains your time, May time, Vivian's time, and be non-apologetic about it. It's almost as important as taking care of your child's sick, needing to see a doctor. Because you heard on the airline, you have to put a mask on yourself before giving it to your children. This is exactly what it is. I think another thing we don't do enough as women is checking in with your community and your friends. I have started not me, but someone started a book club right before the pandemic. And we were supposed to meet once a week. And now we meet every week. And we meet once a month for dinner.
Mhm.
And it is such a great way because friends are like that. The more you use them, the more helpful they are to you, and vice versa. The more you take it for granted that you will have time for them later, the more and more the distance become between the two of you, and it's harder to reconnect. So these are two things that to me is very practical, that I see everybody can try to do without having to sign up for a coach or a diet or travel for a long distance to some exotic locations. All these are caveats, they're icing on the cake. The core thing is the daily commitment to yourself. Um, treat yourself, treat your body as a temple.
Don't feel guilty about it, right?
Yeah, and not apologize for that.
I love what you said about not being apologetic about making me time, right? Your time
Right.
for wellness, for self-care, for reflection. With that said, I know you are also incredibly busy. You're being honored by two awards from Forbes. One is the Forbes 50 over 50, and then the other one is the Forbes Chinese American leaders in business. So thank you again for your time, spending the time with us. I hope whether someone in the audience is a female entrepreneur or a career switcher like you were, hopefully they walked away with some inspiration. And also, just to plug what you're working on, which is such an important mission-driven business, check out Yes, She May to support the next generation of female founders and female entrepreneurs. And be sure to check out Mei's book, Burn, as well as listen to her podcast with Guy Raz on how she built this.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you for the exposure and the opportunity. We also, as women entrepreneurs, have to learn from men in, really promoting each other, supporting each other, helping each other in a way that only when we are really connected and united can we break those ceilings, the glass ceilings or the bamboo ceilings. There are many for Asian Americans in particular. So I wish you the very best of luck in your business journey and in your journey to empower a lot of women to take the right decision for themselves, for their career and for their family.
Thank you so much, Mei. That means the world to me.